Welcome back. It's the Scaling Secrets podcast. Natalie Ruiz is here, and she is the CEO of AnswerConnect. They are a leader in providing innovative, human-powered customer experience solutions for small and mid-sized businesses. And in this day and age, we're always worried about that human connection and customer support and how that relates to scaling and how all of that relates to the evil epic rise of AI and how it needs to be our buddy. It needs to be something that we work with, that we don't take over for it. It doesn't take over for us. And all that is wrapped up in making big changes, unpopular decisions, being an effective leader, so much more. So Natalie Ruiz is here to set us straight, to school us, to teach us some of these things and tell us about AnswerConnect. So Natalie, glad to be speaking with you. How the heck are you?
My goodness, I'm having a great day. What an intro. I love how you framed up some of the conversation that we're going to have today because, yeah, AI can absolutely be our buddy, but, you know, I don't want to be its pet. So I'm super excited to talk about that. Thank you for having me.
Glad to have you. And so in the same way that AI and humans kind of have to be like equals and work together and have the mutual benefit, you and I are equals, right? There's the give and take. I'm here to ask you questions and learn. You're here to demonstrate value and expertise. And so in your own words, what are you all about? What do you bring to the table and what's your company?
Yeah, well, I'll start with the company because that's easy. So, AnswerConnect is a company that's been around for coming up on almost 3 decades, and we've always been about human connection. So we started out as an answering service, so in the telecom space, helping small businesses make sure that they didn't miss out on phone calls. We work with a lot of solopreneurs, a lot of small businesses, and so what we know is that they're out in the field, they're in their vehicle, they're with a client. They don't always have time to answer the phone, which could mean missed business and missed opportunities. It could also mean degrading their reputation if they're answering the phone when they're not in the best space for it. So we have been that live professional human answer for over 20 years, almost 30. Now, over the years, we've built a lot of tech to help support that. And as the world has changed, so have we. And so Answer Connect isn't just about answering calls, we're also about setting appointments, handling web chats, and providing software that helps our small business clients manage their business from wherever they are. So, with the rise of remote work, knowing that a lot of them are on the road and out in the field, our tech tools help them stay connected no matter where they're at.
Very nice. So is it safe to say that with all these tools that are at our disposal, right? The live chats, the cloud phone, there's kind of no excuse for you can only call on these business hours, right? We kind of are almost expected to be available in some way 24 hours with the knowledge base, the live chat, the answering service. Like we kind of should always be reachable in some way.
100%. I think as consumers and just as humans in this age, we're all kind of living and operating and surviving in an always on environment. And when I need something, that doesn't always happen between 9 and 5, Monday through Friday. I often need that evenings, weekends, after hours, maybe after I'm done with work. And so, yeah, a business these days really needs to be there when their client or their potential client needs them. And we can help bridge the gap in many ways.
Well, wonderful. And let's talk about bridging that gap. Like, what really drives you up the wall about like what's not being done right in customer service, and what's the correct way to go about this?
So, customer service, I remember growing up hearing about customer service. I grew up hearing, oh, the customer's always right. And then, you work in hospitality or something and you're like, okay, the customer's always right. But the thing is, the way that you treat your customers, the way that you take care of them, the way that you meet them where they're at when they need something, that's your brand. And so, what drives me up the wall these days, to use your term, is that with so much automation and with so much self service, some companies, some brands think that they don't have to meet their customer where they're at, or they could use a bot instead of a real human. And the thing is, these days, we've all got amazing tech in our hands. We've got our phones, we've got our apps, and we're all pretty savvy. So if I can solve my own problem, I will. But as soon as I can't solve my own problem, I want the shortest distance between I need help and problem solved. And that's a human. I think what drives me up the wall is getting stuck in an endless loop with a chat bot or a voice bot, something that really doesn't understand me. And you go through 15 minutes of that, and then they're like, oh, sounds like you need to speak to an agent. And then you have to wait on hold. That drives me up the wall, and there's a better way.
And I'm curious to find out about that better way, because you would hope that, say there's some company that has this nightmare setup, right? Where like you go and you have a problem and some customer service thing, like, where's my order? And you go and you get caught in that loop. You would hope that there's a log file somewhere where someone goes and review this and say, hey, our system here, it's a little bit dysfunctional. We need to get the bugs worked out, do something else. But you'd hope that's what happens, but then it doesn't, right? Because then you come back, some other customer comes back, or you come once later and it's still the same problem. And so what's the better way? What's the solution?
So I think the better way is remembering who you're working for, first and foremost. And we're working for our clients, right? Our clients are the ones who are choosing us, who are loyal to us. That's keeping the lights on. That's keeping us in business. And so if we're working for them, then they're the priority. I think if we as business leaders lose track of the priority, it's very easy to flirt with maybe less expensive options, to flirt with new shiny options that make big promises about automation and streamlining, and you don't have to have a bunch of frontline agents. But I would say the first thing is understanding your priorities. And for us, we know that humans who are our customers are the priority. And so then you put your budget and your effort where your priorities are. And that means a live answer when people want it, a live answer when they need it, and you make that real easy. You don't hide your phone number, you put it front and center, and then you answer it really quickly without placing somebody on hold, and you're able to help them.
Very nice. And for some reason, what comes to mind is, like, a few months ago, there was some like Jeff Bezos video where like he was at some meeting and all the employees were saying like, oh, we have really good customer service. And he like takes out his phone and they're just like sitting on hold. And he's like, you say these things, you say what you want, but then one random test out there in the wild, and it like sure doesn't measure up. And so I'm curious to know about the before and after with you and your company, because I imagine some companies kind of have this, like they might even think that their customer service is set up well, but then you try it one time randomly and you can't find that phone number, you're stuck on hold, can't find the solution. So what do you see out there as far as the before and after of the magic that you provide?
Absolutely. Great question. So there are all kinds of stats about this. And a lot of times our clients don't know that they have a problem. And so that is always tough. The first step is admitting that you have a problem. But if you don't know what kind of business you're missing, you're, I guess, maybe living in the same reality that those people who were sitting around Jeff Bezos were, right? I think we're doing a great job. The stat is that 80% of people don't leave a voicemail. So let's say you need a new roof on your house, or your furnace needs to be repaired, or you need who knows, any kind of XYZ service appointment. What are you going to do? You're probably going to call until you get a hold of somebody, because these are pretty urgent things. And you may not be loyal to one particular company for it, because these are things that don't happen a whole lot, right? So you're going to keep calling. And let's say you're making this call after you're done with your workday. So it's at 5 or 6 p.m. If you get a voicemail, maybe you leave one. But the next action you take is to call again and try to get a hold of the next person. And overwhelmingly, the one who picks up the phone is going to get the business. So 80% of people aren't even leaving a voicemail, which means if you're that roofing or HVAC or who knows, lawn care company, they don't even know that they're missing out on this business. So what we found is with our clients, the before is, I guess, ignorant bliss, right? Like, I don't really know what it is. And the after is usually increased revenue, happier clients, good online reviews, and so many more opportunities that come about when they're just present and they're there and their customers feel like they're being taken care of. So lots of good things happen when you pick up the phone and when you make it easy for your customers to talk to you.
Lots of good things happen, and there are benefits that we all want, and it might be difficult to see or appreciate those added benefits until we actually get there. And so what sorts of resistance or objection do you come across when you say, hey, you see this problem, you might not be aware of it, but we're telling you about this, we want to make these changes. Do people ever like kind of push back, or is there a problem in getting this transformation to happen?
Of course. I mean, human nature is such, I don't like being told what to do. I don't like being told that I have a problem that I don't know about. And I think our customers are the same. So we try to make it easy. We try to make it easy to test things out with us. We try to make it easy to walk before we run. So maybe send us calls just after hours. Nothing to lose here. see how we do. Pretty soon, we'll find out that they want to send us calls all the time because we're doing a really great job. Our receptionists have one focus, doing a great job on the phone. Whereas somebody who might work in their brick and mortar office or be responsible for the phone probably has 100 different focuses. So there's pushback on kind of that first step, which is understanding if they've even got a problem, if there's going to be an ROI for doing this. One of the other challenges that we face is people wondering, how are you going to know what to say? How are you going to sound like you're part of my business? How are you going to know how to handle this? And we do a really great job in our onboarding process, and we've built some really amazing tech that helps ensure that the receptionist who gets the call has all of the information they need to sound like they're a receptionist right in the office. So we aren't going to be the person who probably, gives the estimate on the roofing job or the attorney who goes to court for them, but we can ask all of the questions, get all of the information, and even give some info based on FAQs and such that helps facilitate that intake and that customer service experience.
Very nice. And that's reassuring that it can be a small little test and experiment to see how it goes.
Yeah.
And they don't have to know everything. And since this is the Scaling Secrets podcast, it seems like a lot of business owners, they have a problem scaling because no one can do it as well as me, or no one can do it as well as my core team. And I'm afraid of handing it off because they might know all these questions. But you're saying that a lot of it can be just taking in the information and then saying, I'll get back to you. And at least that's someone answering the phone and not just it going to some voicemail where someone will move on. But do business owners have this concern about will they even be asking the right questions? Is there that afraidness of will they even know what to say at all?
Of course. But we go through a pretty comprehensive onboarding experience, and we've been at this for a long time, and we work with lots and lots and lots of businesses. So it's not our first rodeo. And while every business is unique, there's a lot of commonalities. And usually, if you think about any vertical or any type of business, there's probably going to be a handful of reasons why somebody's calling. They are interested in new business, they're an existing client, they're calling for Robert, they have questions that they couldn't get answered on the website. They're not sure if they actually do want to be a client yet, more or less. And so we'll build out a framework that encompasses that. We'll add in some company information. And then it's not as though we do a setup and we never talk to our clients again. There's give and take. And so if they're running a new campaign, or if their business happens to be seasonal, or if any of these things are going on, they'll have a client account manager who they can reach out to. Or we may even proactively reach out to them and say, hey, folks are calling in and they're asking about X, Y, and Z. How do you want us to handle that? And so in many ways, we're very much a partner who can grow and evolve and change with the clients. So while we can't do a direct knowledge upload, we can do a pretty good job of making sure that everyone's taken care of.
Very nice. So you have a framework, and then it's also something where you can go and improve the system later. And we mentioned a few times a little bit about the amazing new technology, right? The AI that's available, which is both good and bad, right? Because it's sometimes I'm amazed. Like I use ChatGPT every day since the day it came out, and you ask it questions, and you're like, I'm amazed that it even understands me in that way. But then every now and then you hear these stories, right? You hear about the lawyer that used it to write some legal document, and it was all these made up cases. There was some Chevrolet dealership where someone was pranking the chatbot to sell them a car for $1.
Yes.
And someone went and asked the math problem, and it was hey, the answer is 82.5, and just silly stuff. So there's that concern with AI of the system catastrophically failing or a little bit of embarrassment. And so what's possible, and how do we allay some of these fears about the newness of the technology?
So, as far as what's possible, it will be interesting to see, right? It looks like almost anything is possible at this point. But I think that we really need to employ critical thinking, because just because something's possible doesn't mean that it is the best option maybe for your business or the best option maybe for society. I think that AI is an amazing tool. And I also use ChatGPT, every day, and so many tools. And it's so great in many ways. But you also have to, as a human, read it to see if it makes sense, fact check some of the things that they've put in there, because it's known. I think they call it a hallucination when it just blatantly makes things up. And then also not pass off something that's entirely chat GPT as your own, right? It's a tool, not a replacement. And I think that when it comes to customer service, when it comes to coding, when it comes to writing, all these amazing things that AI could be used for, I am excited about the ways that it can help us be more efficient. I am so excited about the way that it could aggregate and give me takeaways from a huge data set much, much faster than any person that I get to work with. But you have to have a human who's in there looking for anomalies, using our past experience, using kind of our gut check, our intuition, our lived experience to make sure that that all makes sense. And when it comes to customer service, I think the same is true. When we think of the brands that we love, and we could name, I remember reading books about and also loving, companies like Zappos or Nordstrom or, Tom's Shoes or back in the day, these companies that have lore about them. And do you remember the story about the person who returned tires to Nordstrom because it used to be a tire shop? Things like
And
this.
they didn't even sell them.
Right. So a bot, I just don't think a bot will be able to make the same decision that that customer service made, which was to accept the tires, right? To do that thing. Zappos call center agents talking to people through really difficult lived, like personal situations, and not having a limit to how lengthy a call should be, and helping people pick out shoes for their wedding or whatever the case is. Just going the extra mile, building that rapport, having that human touch. It made these brands famous. And so while there's a place for automation and there's a place for efficiency, I feel like the soul of a brand is how you make people feel. And interacting with a bot, interacting with, essentially an algorithm or a bunch of code, it doesn't really make you feel anything. And so I think we run the risk of losing some of that, losing some of the magic that we can have when we really connect with our clients, if we fully automate it and if we don't keep the human connection in play.
I like it. So you can automate, but not fully automate it, right? You can work with it, you can check it. And it seems to me a lot of it comes back to what's the goal, right? You want to have this good customer experience, you want people to come back. And so as long as you're doing that, then you might do some of the crazy things or the things that are a little bit outside your comfort zone, like having the phone number visible, like we mentioned earlier, or not limiting the call time just because you're saying, well, that's kind of a little bit of an issue, maybe a minor issue, but the big goal is here. What we want to do is deliver this great customer experience. And so you set up all these amazing things for companies. And what helps me sometimes is to dive into like a specific niche or a specific type of company that you work with, because those are always where the fun stories are, right? And sometimes someone says like, oh, well, I work with like a home contractor. And I think, oh, I didn't even realize that like this industry could really make good use of this. So is there any kind of like case study, success story like that comes to mind where like you jumped in and you beefed up the customer service in some company or some industry that we normally wouldn't think needs this sort of help?
That's a great question. I will tell you, I have been working in this industry for almost 20 years, and I'm probably surprised weekly by some of the different companies that we get to work with. Before I worked here, I had no idea that this even existed. I guess I maybe knew that there was something like an answering service because of rough or kind of like not knock your socks off experiences I might have had, like calling my dentist after hours, right?
Oh,
But I
yeah.
didn't know that something that really gelled and meshed and led to a great customer experience happened. So I don't necessarily want to name off like the most weird or kind of wacky companies that we've worked with, although it's alluring to do so. But I would say something that surprised me, and it started out as kind of a trickle and then turned into a fire hose, was getting into working with franchises. So there's many, many, many franchises across the United States and Canada and elsewhere. And we worked with a lot of them independently. They would call in, they're getting leads, they're small, they're busy, we're answering the call to make sure they don't miss out on a lead. But eventually we started to think more upstream and realize that there's a corporate franchise who is actually, paying for the branding. There's a mechanism for folks to get into owning franchises. There's some expectations as to how they receive and handle leads. And so maybe talking with corporate could really help. And so we now, all these years later, have some really deep rooted and advantageous partnerships at the corporate level with franchises. And these are franchisees that do everything from like home repair to real estate to people who put up Christmas lights on your house seasonally to people who do like pest spraying, around the home. And what started out with just very small kind of independent one-off businesses now has this entire network, and the ROI is there. So they're very excited about what we do. We help make sure that, when somebody's calling around and saying, it is mosquito season, I need somebody to come and take care of this, that business is immediately captured. And over time, the effects have just compounded and been so positive. And I don't think that the folks who are calling in for these services have any idea that we aren't the franchise owner themselves.
That's really cool. And that's what we want, right? We want it to be seamless in that way where they're just focusing on my problems being solved, not, well, are they trying to cut costs or they're doing this weird after hours thing? And so it just, it's invisible in that way. And that's really a scaling secret right there, right? Where you're getting into the B2B businesses and, jumping in and getting those problems figured out. So as far as like customer service and all that, like, is there anything that I'm missing here? Is there like a hidden question or something about like the customer service space that we need to be aware of, but I just don't know how to ask because I'm not as dialed in as you are?
Gosh, on one hand, probably. I would also say it is rather simple if you remember who you're working for and if you remember that it's the customer. What do people want? They want to be able to reach you. We offer 24/7, 365 service. The phone will always be answered. It's always going to be a human. It's always going to be somebody who knows a little bit about the business and has instructions on how to best help. So in that regard, it's pretty simple. I think, the best question you could be asking, Robert, is, well, gosh, AnswerConnect sounds amazing. And I bet some of my listeners really want it. How would I sign up? Or why might I sign up? And I would say, yes, they should. We'll make it easy for them. And they should go to our website, AnswerConnect.com, and talk with one of our amazing salespeople about what their business is all about and how we can probably best help them.
Very nice. And that's on brand, right? Where you say, we'll answer the phone, but it also applies to if you are interested in AnswerConnect, you can go there and have that conversation there. And we'll circle back around at the end and plug that URL at the end. But I want to make sure that in that last 2 minutes, we squeeze in a little bit about some of like the leadership and the core values and the company culture. I know that you're big on that, and we're here to showcase you and show off how you've figured out a lot of these things in your business in the past 20 years. So as far as like leadership, sometimes there's a lot of like keywords, platitudes. It's easy to get lost in the soup there. So what should we know about being better leaders and just better people? Like, what are the lessons you have to give us in that area?
Oh my goodness. Such great questions. Leadership is a journey. What I've learned through doing this now for decades is that there's no finish line. And just about the time I think I've figured it out, like check mark, nailed it, I'll encounter a situation that reminds me that I don't know it all. I think it fundamentally comes down to caring about your people, first and foremost, being willing to be vulnerable with them. They should know that you don't know everything, but together we could probably figure it out. I think the best leaders are learners, people who've committed to lifelong learning, and our core values at AnswerConnect are learning, sharing, and giving back. It's really, really key. And so one of my job expectations, there aren't a whole lot of things that are written down, but one of them is that I will always be learning every single day. And all of our full-time positions have paid learning time. So people get paid time on the clock to better themselves. And we've got a whole university set up for this. And I mention it because I think especially if you've been at something for a long time, if you've got a fancy title, if you've got people who look to you because you've got influence and power over them, you can't just sit back on your haunches and think that you know it all, because you don't. And so the more I learn, the more I know that I have a lot more to learn. And I think that is key with leadership. It's being open. It's staying nimble. It's not being afraid of saying, I'm not sure on that, and working with your team on that. But that all comes from a fundamental place of caring. I hope with my teams that we get to work together forever. And I mean that. And I think that if you have that mindset, you invest in people differently than if you think that people are more transactional. It doesn't mean that they have to stay with me forever. But I will say we have really good employee retention. And I think that's because of how we take care of people, how we grow people, and the company culture that we've got.
Amazing. And that is something for us to aspire to. Ever since I was a kid and watched Mr. Rogers and saw how kind he was, and it's like, man, that is like the ultimate goal, to be someone like that who just like cares about people and is giving back and is always learning and avoiding the Dunning-Kruger graph where the people that know the least think they know the most, and we have to fight that human nature. And so you mentioned about the vulnerability and the learning, and is there anything that you're in the middle of learning or trying to figure out, like anything that like you're struggling with in this moment?
Great question. So every day I'm trying to learn more and more about AI. I mean, every day there's new headlines and new things. So it is going to disrupt not only our business, but I think our life. So I'm trying to understand how that's working, if there's any regulation or legislation, like how that's going to make its way into all of our apps and our news feeds and my kids' phones and things like this. So I'm constantly trying to learn about that from a business and personal perspective. I think that also we're a fully remote company. We have been since 2007. And we're constantly still learning about and thinking about how humans connect with each other and how to make really meaningful connections, how to scale company culture across many miles, many cultures, many time zones. And again, I don't know that there's a finish line to that because as humans, we're constantly evolving as the world changes too.
Nicely put. We're always working on it, and we're always getting to that next step, that next milestone. It's never done. And in the spirit of that, you've already shared all sorts of cool scaling secrets, but is there like a number one scaling secret, or just like one last one for us to fit in here?
Ooh, that's a lot of pressure, Robert. One last
It is.
scaling secret. We go further together. We go further together. I would have no chance at the type of success that we've seen in our business without such an amazing team surrounding me. And so when you can collaborate and call on the genius of the folks around you, and you can also put your ego in the back seat because there's going to be a lot of folks who are better at different things than you, it's amazing what you can do.
I agree completely. And it's hard to fight that ego sometimes and say, okay, there's probably a simpler way, or we put more brains on it, or in computer programming, there's the rubber duck uh, principle, right? Where like you have this problem and you explain your problem to a rubber duck, and just explaining that, you're like, hey, some solutions open themselves up just from me putting into words. It's like talking to a therapist or just talking to the wall. You get something figured out by bringing in other people and getting the problem solved together. And so AnswerConnect, we mentioned it earlier. We promise we mention it again. So just in case someone like skipped to the end of this, what's the quick sales pitch for AnswerConnect? Why should someone go to it right now and sign up?
Your customers deserve AnswerConnect. Never miss a call again. Never miss out on business or opportunities again, and secure your business reputation, because reputation is all about how you make people feel.
Very nice. So we need it, even if we don't realize we need it, or the problem might be even worse than we realize. So AnswerConnect, you need it to boost that reputation and in order to scale, which we're all about here on this podcast. So as people are going to AnswerConnect.com.
Yeah.
So Natalie, it's time to put you on the spot. I warned you about this before we started recording, to give us a fun quote or lesson to really give us that, I don't know what you'd call it, like the memorableness, I guess, the catchphrase of it. What do you have as far as the quote or lesson for us?
You know what? I'm going to keep it on theme with today's conversation. So I'm going to think about one of my all-time favorite quotes by the late, great Dr. Maya Angelou. You know this quote: people are going to forget what you've done. They're going to forget what you've said, but they are never going to forget the way that you made them feel. That comes into play for leadership. It comes into play for all of business. It definitely comes into play for customer service. And it's something I try to keep in mind in just the way that I behave as a human.
That is helpful for us all to keep in mind. They will remember the way that you made them feel, and the way that you should feel is wanting to go to AnswerConnect.com right now and see what all the fuss is about, and have one of those conversations and say, hey, there is a better way. I can and should have Natalie and her team. They've done this for 20 years. They can plug into my business. They can make things so much easier as far as the customer service, as far as the inbound calls. I can't even believe I'm missing on these 80% of people that they get to the voicemail, they don't leave it, they move on to my competitors. It's time to dominate the market, and go to AnswerConnect.com, and we'll see you there. And thank you, Natalie, for a super fun conversation. You kept me on my toes, and I feel like we squeezed in like 2 podcasts in one, so I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. It was a blast. Have an awesome rest of your day, Robert.